I just think at 66 to 1, there's worse big prices that you're going to back all week.
Hello and welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel in association with Racing TV, and we're in a slightly different location today. We're going to be previewing the 2025 Randox Grand National, and instead of going through every single race, we're going to highlight our best bets for each day and then have our 1, 2, 3 in the big race on Saturday. What are you most looking forward to at the Grand National meeting?
I think there's plenty of fantastic racing on. The Grade 1s have held up very well for Thursday. It looks like Friday and Saturday will be excellent as well. And the Grand National itself, some will say it maybe doesn't have the same sort of feeling that it did a number of years ago. It's still a very, very good race, and it's a classy renewal this year.
It is, absolutely. And for those that might just be tuning in purely because you need to know which horse you need to back in front of the family, the one race that you watch every year, do go and skip to around probably 7 or 8 minutes. I will actually just have it on chapters at the bottom, so you can go and click and find out who we fancy for the Grand National. I've actually got a decent record at the National.
Do you?
Yeah. I backed Tiger Roll the second time before Cheltenham, and I backed Noble Yates.
Noble Yates was a very, very good one. I did have a good record in the National, and the last couple of years it's been a little bit hairy, but I've got good vibes, good feeling this year.
Do you know why I've got good vibes? Because we've come in the same shirt today.
This is absolutely... This wasn't planned, but we decided that we were doing this in work, and we both turned up in exactly, well, pretty much the same shirt.
This lighting does go and show just how tanned you are compared to me as well.
Bloody hell, mate. You need to get out in the sun.
It's not, I do.
It's
I definitely
sunny
do.
outside.
I know. Right, let's crack on with things. We're going to go for Thursday first. Our best bets on Thursday. I'm going to start things off. Mine's going to come. I'm going to got 2 actually. First one's going to come in the 2:20, and that is Put Your Hands Together, who was a lot bigger this morning before Lou Lamber's been pulled out. He's now 3 to 1. I just thought that his performance in the Fred Winter was of a graded horse. Live Conti, I think, is going to be very smart going forward. I just wonder whether slight inexperience might hamper his chances. He was very good on his only start for Dan Skelton. I think he does need to build on that personally to get near Put Your Hands Together, and a flat track, quick ground will suit a flatbred horse. So for me, Put Your Hands Together at 3 to 1 will be my first bet on Thursday. My second one will be in the following race, and that is another Irish horse. I'm taking on Grey Dawning. I'm taking on the Skeltons, this time with Spillan's Tower at 7 to 2. I just thought that the run in the King George you can forgive, because so many horses go to the King George, so many horses underperform and not show their showing. Envoi LM was one of those in recent years.
Yep.
A Plus Tard, horses like that, they've never really put it all together, and Kempton is just a very much a specialist track in my opinion.
Yep.
He went there, didn't massively love it. I don't think he hated it, but just didn't put in what we know he can. On his previous start, he was up the arse of Factorfile in the John Durkin, in front of Galopin des Champs, in front of Fast or Slow. So for me, I think that we're going to see a much better Spillan's Tower. I think this ground will suit him. He skipped Cheltenham. Likewise with Grey Dawning. I just feel with Grey Dawning, there's something still nagging me about Aintree last year. And I think he should have ran better. So I'm not sure, 100% sure he's going to be A, like the track, or B, be good enough to beat Spillan's Tower in general.
That's understandable. I've got 2 as well, both coming in Grade 1s, very similar races to yourself.
Sorry, very quickly, what did you think of Lou Lambert not running?
Well, I thought he was an absolute certainty to run.
He's running in the 2.5 mile Grade 1 novice on Saturday.
Yeah, but did you not look at the juvenile hurdle though? Based on his form, I know Put Your Hands Together, Live Conti, they're good horses. It was a penalty kick.
It was.
It confused me. It really did confuse me. But anyway, going back to the manifesto, which is the first race of the entire meeting, I really fancy Impere Pass here. Paul Townend coming over to ride the horse. Disappointing last time out at Leopardstown. I think you can put a line through that. Just didn't happen for him on the day. He is perhaps a slightly better horse going right-handed, but he's still got a Cheltenham Festival win to his name. He won the Aintree hurdle at this card last year on this day. Django Bay.
Why don't you like him?
I'm just lukewarm. I thought he threw it away against Handstands at Sandown. And Handstand's good horse, could have a very good chance in the 3 mile Grade 1 on the Friday. Of course, that could be a really good piece of form. And he rallied really well to win the Arkle. I'm just not sure. I'd want to see what that Arkle actually amounts to. Because the best horse was back in 3rd. The rest of us, they've all finished in a heap. It could be a really good race. It could be a pretty ordinary race. I wouldn't be so sure. Impere Pass comes here fresh, which I like. He's already won at Aintree. I think there's an awful lot to like. And I can't believe, no wonder you're looking pale, because you're feeling bad, because the bowl, you've just got it wrong. Grey Dawning is the horse to be on here.
I haven't
and I
got
tell
this
you,
one
the
wrong.
reason why I'll debunk your theory is he went to Aintree last year, and he's had a hard, long season, which had included a Cheltenham Festival win. He ran on Trials Day before that. As for Dan Skelton, purposely said on Road to Aintree last week that after the King George, which was a complete non-event, pulled up pretty early, he knew he had to have a good spring with this horse. They've put him away especially. He went and ran at Kelso, 4-runner race, jumped for fun. That probably didn't take a whole pile out of him. I think he comes here as the horse to be on side. He's around 5-2. Spillane Tower, I get it. I get completely your angle. And if he went and won, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd want to see him do it in England before I'd be back.
Fair enough. But my one thing to counteract your argument is I knew you were a big fan of him if you went to Punchestown for the Punchestown Gold Cup. And I know it's completely different at Aintree, but the only reason why he's not running there is because I know the way thinking's going to run there. Is he not just a really, really top class horse coming into this? And I know Grey Dawning is as well.
Yes, no.
But are we not looking at possibly a horse that could have gone and won a Punchestown Gold Cup? Whether is Grey Dawning good enough to do that?
Potentially. Well, Grey Dawning probably isn't up to beating I Know the Way You're Thinking. However, my worry is that Jimmy Mangan came out and said the horse didn't travel well going over to Kempton. That was the reason that he's put down to the horse's poor performance.
Liverpool a lot closer than Kempton, though.
It is. And not going over at Christmas time, not having to settle over for a few days before Christmas. Plenty of positives in that regard. Before I parted with my hard earns, I'd want to see him do it in England once. That's my only thing against him. I love the horse. I think he's a quality horse.
I think that's completely fair. Right, now moving on to Friday. I've got two here, and my first one comes in the 2:20. It's the 2.5 mile William Hill handicap hurdle. Back Katira in this race to win last year, which is great. I'm going to have to time that now because I don't back many winners, so I need to tell the people about them when I do. And this time, I think I'm really hopeful I'm going to go back to back here.
Okay.
Weighed out for Ollie Murphy at 10-1. I think that the whole plan with this horse was to run in the Martin Pipe. I think they pretty much centred their whole season around it. And then they changed the rulings and he needed an extra run and the plan went right up in the air. I think that his mark is extremely workable. He's done it at 2 this year. It's all been at 2. He's looked laboured, hard work. Looks like he's just getting going. Where the 2.5 miles I think will really suit him. I even think that he could be a possible 3-miler down the line. I think he could possibly develop into a graded horse over 3 miles and hurdles. He's only small, he's not very big. He jumps relatively well. Sean Bowen's going to be on. I think this end-to-end gallop over 2.5 miles at Aintree on decent ground is really going to suit him, and he's 10-1. So I quite like Weighed Out. I think he's almost verging on nap of the week for me. I just think 10-1's a good price, and there is definitely a big handicap off his mark.
Yes.
I think it's going to be this one.
Okay. Couldn't see that.
And then my other one is in the last race, the boys' race on Friday. And I'm going to back one of James Owens at 25-1. I quite like Cavan Club, appropriately named actually for Liverpool, and considering the Cavan Club is where the Beatles played. I'm sure plenty of our viewers will know that. The younger ones might not necessarily know that. But I suspect that he's going to come in a little bit purely for local popularity. I just think he's got a good chance. The third of his latest runs. Well, I don't know how to say this. I'm not talking very well. The third latest run, 3 runs ago.
That's the one.
There we go. He finished second at Cheltenham. That was at the October meeting. He then went to the December meeting, finished behind Mirabad. I thought he ran a really nice race that day. Then went to Doncaster on his last run, won. Just won. I still think he can massively improve from that, and there was a good gap in between the December run and the Doncaster run on the 1st of March. I think he'll come forward. I think that his mark of 121 is very much workable, and Cavan Club for me at a big price at 25-1. I think he could go well.
Yeah, I see the case for those two. Again, I'm going to take you on in the 220, the handicap hurdle. I'm going to give a chance to last year's Winning Connections with Listen to Your Heart.
Have you been to Dan Skelton's recently?
I have, yeah. However, it's not like the usual where I go to some trainer that doesn't necessarily train winners and put them all up. I think she has been laid out for the race in terms of she ran in the Premier Novices Hurdle at Kelso last time out when finishing 4th behind Jet to Vegas, who will run a Grade 1 later in the week for Lucinda. They just want to step her up to 2.5 miles at this stage. She's on the cusp of getting into the race. That would be my one worry. She was 25 to 1 earlier in the week. She's now into as short as 16s, generally 20s though, which I think is well worth a chance considering if she gets in, she's going to be near the bottom of the weights. Harry Skelton's going to ride, and we know how good Dan Skelton is with these Aintree handicaps over years gone by. So she'd be one for me in the 220 against Wade Out, and really fancy one in the Topham. Glenn Gooley for Willie Mullins. Ran in the Grand National last year, was in front at the chair, jumped for fun. His jumping fell apart on the second circuit. He was a tired horse, doesn't stay over 3 miles in a taxi. This is over 2 mile 5. He'd be the type of horse that I think will really suit the Topham, though. You can just let him fly, jumps well. I know Willie Mullins also has James de Burley in there, not a perennial winner. I know Glenn Gooley's form figures, you look at the form figures and go, what on earth is he smoking? However, if you look back at the first circuit of the Grand National last year, you'll see my case. He's around 16 to 1. I really fancy him.
There we go, Glenn Gooley in the Topham for Andrew. Right, moving on to Saturday, the Grand National Day. I've only got one fancy before we talk about the big race. That comes at 2:30. That is Imperial Saint at 12 to 1 each way. Won at Aintree this season over 2.5 miles. I think he's been crying out for a step up in trip. We last saw him in the Pendle finishing 4th, 7 lengths behind Roubaud. I honestly think this horse is going to be a very, very, very decent 3-miler. One that could even feature in something like a Charlie Hall at the start of next year. On the up, improving, has been untested at 3 miles. I think that's going to bring out the best in him, and 12 to 1's very fair.
Yep, I can completely see that. 3 mile handicap hurdle, Mr. Hope Street's in there for Dan Skelton.
Really?
However, he is a pretty short price. I think everyone's caught on.
5 to 1?
5 to 1. It's not a great price for a handicap hurdle. You can back it at that price. It wouldn't really be for me. Park of Kings is in that race. He's in the 2.5 mile race as well. I'd prefer him in the 3 miler if he was to go there. But the one bet that I'm actually going to put up is in the bumper, which is a little bit unlike me. I'm going to give a chance to a horse called Storming George, 25 to 1. I just think this horse, Neil King, Peter Beadles, won this race a few years ago with Look Away. They've really liked this horse ever since he was a young horse, Order of St. George gelding, and won really nicely on his racecourse debut. He goes there, like so many of them, with just 1 start, 1 win, but he's 25 to 1. I'm going to give him a chance, and one that I'm going to have a fiver each way on, just at an absolutely raj price, as they tell me, is Jupiter Des Mottes in the Sefton Novices Hurdle.
66 to 1, I heard.
66 to 1. Horse I put up at the start of the season. You'd look and go, he has plenty to find, which he does. It's an ordinary 3 mile novice hurdle, though. Lucinda's done this before with similar types of horses.
Apple Away, Mahoy Seigneur.
Exactly. Coming in with not necessarily, high profiles. I just think at 66 to 1, there's worse big prices that you're going to back all week.
There we go. Jupiter Des Mottes for Lucinda Russell. I thought that he was better than what he showed on his last start.
Yeah.
I think the winner got away.
He did slightly, and the winner will run again against him, Crest of Fortune. I'd be disappointed if you can't throw that around, to be honest, that air form.
Right, now moving on to the big one itself. 4 o'clock on Saturday is the Randox Grand National, the one race that the whole country stops to watch, and we're going to give you a 1, 2, 3, our 3 biggest fancies in the race. I'm going to have a 10 to 1 shot, a 25 to 1 shot, and a 100 to 1 shot. So you can pick whichever one that you fancy, one either at the top of the weights, mid-range, or a big price, just a dart. And I'm sure you've probably got something similar.
No, 2 fancied horses, one at a bigger price.
My one at a bigger price, and Andrew's going to shake his head. But I am going to take a chance at 100 to 1 that Phil Dorr can run a big race. I think he is... I just look back at this season with him, and you might shake your head, but I've been trying to work out what they're doing with him, because he keeps running in some races, not running very well, but not running disastrously. And I'm thinking, well, he's much better than that. What's the grand plan? I think the Grand National might be the grand plan. Now, he's got a lot to do. He's got to turn around a lot of form, but he's ran in the right races this year. He's 100 to 1. He was a very classy young horse. We're yet to see it this season. I just think at 100 to 1, he's a horse close to my heart, and it's probably heart over head, but I'm going to side with him. My second pick is going to be Manila Kakuna for Willie Mullins, who won the Bet365 Gold Cup at Sandown last year. Now, the one thing that's put me off, I was really fancied him because I thought Danny Mullins was going to ride, and today it was announced that Johnny Burke was going to take the ride. That's not a negative for me, because I think that Johnny Burke's a really good jockey, but I just don't like the angle that the jockey's never sat on him before. That would be the concern.
a little bit of a concern because he's a quirky enough horse.
He is a quirky enough horse. And in the Grand National, I just want a bit of a relationship between horse and rider, purely because you almost need to know a horse with that test. And that would put me off slightly. He's 25 to 1. He's probably quite a fair price. Then the one I come down on that I think could go and win is Hewick. He's probably my best pick. He's 10 to 1, and everything for me screams like a Hewick day.
Yeah, I can see that.
He's ran really well this season. He had the perfect prep over hurdles. And to me, the Grand National's changed massively in the last couple of years. Last year, I thought it was completely unrecognisable. It was a great race, but it was more of I felt like it was ran like a Gold Cup. It was a 3.5 mile staying chase rather than a grueling Grand National that we've become used to over years and years and years. I think the ground's going to be relatively good. It's going to suit him. I think Classy Horse will come to the front. That he's a classy horse. I think he's got a mark of 162, 161.
He does, 162, yeah.
I just think that Hewick, it just screams to me like a race he's going to pop up in. He does it almost every single year. The King George, I think Hewick's got a big chance.
Yep, completely see that. My top three, starting at third, would be Manila Indo at 50 to 1, horse that's been a legend of the game, really Gold Cup winner obviously in the past. I agree with you completely. I do think you need almost back class grade 1 form, or certainly top graded form these days for this race. He's only ran twice this season, but I still think there's been enough to suggest that, you know, he's still on a decent enough he's on decent enough terms with himself to run a big race. Obviously placed in the race last year. He's 50s. Second, I know it's not overly, I'm not reinventing the wheel here.
Go on.
But I can't get away from Ian Maximus running another huge race.
He could just run a massive race, couldn't he?
I can't see how he doesn't run well. And I know he's off 169. I know it's a big weight.
Is he £7 higher than he was last year?
He is. But still, like, he won the race last year, like he could have had another stone on his back. So,
well, people were saying Gold Cup, weren't they?
They were, and he's been kind of messing around. Again, he hasn't run particularly well this season. I just can see a world where he runs very, very well for Townend and Mullins. He will end up still being Mullins' first string, and that is something to always be feared. And unfortunately, I agree with you about Hewick.
Hewick?
I really do. I've really sweetened to him over the last couple of weeks. Main reason for me is the ground. He's just a completely different beast on good ground. He has throughout his entirety of his career. Again, has that back class graded form. I loved the way, and I know beating a Styrian Furlonge in a conditions hurdle means kind of nothing in the grand scheme of the Grand National. I just loved the way he travelled through the race, full of zest, full of enthusiasm, on that slightly nicer ground. I know Shark's come out, he's been awfully bullish, and I never really liked the trainer of my horse wanting to be that bullish, but at the same time, you can see why he's getting that
and
feeling.
He's won a Grand National before. The American one.
He has indeed. I think it's a slightly different test, but that being said, he's a lovable horse. It would be a great, great spectacle, but other than that, he does actually, on all form, and even his handicap rating in comparison to those around him, he's not badly handicapped for a Grade 1 winner.
He's not at all. So, Hewick.
Hewick for me.
There we go. Both of us agreeing on Hewick. Now we've got a quick surprise for you as well. We're going to bring in our resident racing TV analyst at this point.
I guess so at this stage, which is a bit eerie to say, isn't it? Somehow I'm on the box today.
It is. Unfortunately, you've not got a seat, but
Not that professional.
no. But your Grand National 1, 2, 3. We'll start with the third.
The third, I will go with, I think Manila Indo. I don't think he's capable of winning at 12, but obviously ran extremely well in the race last year, prepped for it all year long. I just can see him running a really good race again, despite being the age of 12.
Mm-hmm. And then the second?
Manila Kakuna, who is now ridden by Johnny Berg, which is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I spoke about this earlier. I really fancy him, and I've just gone off him a little bit because, not that Johnny Burke's a bad jockey, but just because it's a jockey that doesn't know him.
Well, no, I agree with you, and you would have put everything on Danny Mullins riding him, given his success last year. I guess he'll ride Meads in the Waters, who just doesn't stay, so it does seem a bit strange. I just think he's been prepped for the race all year, coming down slowly, spring horse with Grade 1 form back in novice hurdles. So his weight is probably not ideal. He's in the high 150s, which isn't a gift, But again, a horse has just been prepped for the race all year. Conditions coming right. He comes right in the spring. And despite the strange jockey booking, I think he's very capable. I think he'll be the best of the Willie Mullins lot anyway.
Right, and now the winner of the 2025 Randox Grand National is going to be
my good old friend Hewick. The last time I backed this horse was the King George.
We're all in a line.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
can we do this again? I need to change desperately. Intense raffles can't be beat instead. No, look, I mean, the ground's come right for him. Obviously, they're in very bullish form about how he is. Obviously, great spin over hurdles last time out. Still running well in Grade 1s earlier this season. And he's not an out-and-out Grade 1 horse. I think we can all appreciate that. But he is a reliable, consistent horse. And I think the type you need for a modern national. He's not overly big. He'll probably go through the top of his fences. But he just seems to tick a lot of boxes for me and what you need for this race nowadays.
There we go. We're all with Hewick in the 2025 Randox Grand National. We do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit that like button. We've even got a special guest on. Do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you soon.